Okay, so at this point, hopefully, we're starting to feel a little more comfortable with ARC. And I will say, one of the things you may notice is that I am heavily using shortcuts to kind of navigate through ARC. And that is a big part of it, but you don't have to if you're not comfortable with it. And as I move through, I will try and also highlight where you can effectively move between different things in ARC without having to use those shortcuts. So for example, I constantly press Command-T to open new tabs, but you could just as easily come down here to the plus and choose to open a new tab. Completely up to you. But this lecture isn't about that. This lecture is actually going to be more on these spaces that I talked about. So you may recall we've already created an example space, and we've also created or had this personal space from the very beginning when we started with ARC. Now what I want to do is I want to create a more realistic scenario for you as a student and how you might choose to organize things in ARC using spaces. So the thing you probably want to make sure you've already done is gone through the video where I talk about profiles, because we're going to be working in profiles here to create these spaces, and there's a very specific reason why I'd like to work with profiles. Okay, so we're going to work with profiles, and in this space specifically we're going to create a new space for our student account. Okay, so I have this personal tab here, which is actually technically tied to my instructor. I'm going to delete it eventually, but we're going to go through the motion of creating two brand new spaces, one that we're going to call personal and one that we're going to call student, and we'll start by creating the student one. So come down here to the plus and click on the plus in the sidebar and come up here and choose new space. And again, ARC is going to walk us through creating this space. We've got some really nifty little micro animations that I love. So separate your tabs for life, work projects, and more. All right, so this first one it could be a student space, but when I think about students, what I realize is that you're not just living as a student in this single space. As a student, you're probably taking multiple classes, right? So maybe you're taking a class where you're in biology, right? And then you're taking, I don't know, an English class. So instead of naming the space student, what I actually am going to do is I'm going to name this after the biology course I used to teach. Like I'm a student taking it, so Biology 1406. And then here's the cool thing. In this space, you can come over here and you can choose either an emoji or an icon that represents that space. So maybe for biology here, I want to do a virus. Let's see. How about a test tube? There we go. Let's do a nice little test tube for Biology 1406. Now, in your profiles, you might have personal and student. I'm going to pretend like my instructor account here is the student one, so I'm going to make sure I've selected instructor. And then for choose a theme, I'm going to go ahead and click on theme. And I always think of biology as being green. So I'm going to start here with this green, and that starts you here in this color swatch. And I'm going to move this until I get the green I want. So maybe I want this green. Now let's say I want to actually change it to be a lighter appearance or a darker appearance. I can actually click on either of these and it toggles between. This is going to set it to automatic appearance based on your system settings. So if you have your Mac transition between light and dark mode, it's going to transition naturally with ARC. Here I'm looking at these two. I think I'm going to stick with the lighter appearance for that green. And then here you can actually drag this to make it a little darker or lighter. You can kind of mute the actual color of the green. And then if you want to add some texture, you can grab this wheel and you can actually add some texture there. You can see that there's a little more noise. So I'm going to turn down that noise because I like it to be kind of clean. And I'm going to turn this all the way up. And once you're happy with your space, go ahead and click Create Space. And boom, I have my Biology 1406 space. And now you'll notice that because I have more than one space, I have a representation of each space down here with either its emoji or its icon. Now I'm going to go ahead and delete this personal space so that I'm only working with Biology 1406 again. And notice I've lost those space icons because I'm only working one space. But now let's say that I've got another class. let's do another space. So we're going to click the plus button. I'm going to do new space. And let's say that this one is, I don't know, let's do English 1401. I don't know if that's a course, but we'll go ahead and do it. And let's say I'm going to come over here and just use one of ARC's default icons for this one. And I'm going to go ahead and choose the book. Okay. Again, if I'm wanting to be a student, I'm going to pretend like I'm a student using my instructor profile here, and then I'm going to choose a theme. And I think that this one could do with a nice red. So I'm going to go ahead and do red. Let's do a lighter toned red. And actually, I will bring you down. There we go. And that's my English space. And I'm going to click Create Space. And boom. I now have two spaces. Okay? My biology one and my English one. So currently I'm in my English one. But if I want to switch over to my biology one, if you're using a Magic Trackpad or if you're on a MacBook and you have the trackpad, you can actually swipe with two fingers, left or right, to move between the spaces. If you don't have that feature enabled, you can just go down here and click on the icon for a space and move between them. And notice how I get color changes. And you know what? I'm going to come up here, just in case anybody watching is colorblind. I'm going to go ahead and switch this to a purple, just so that there's a little more distinction between it and that green space. So there we go. I have this plum colored kind of English space, and then I transition to this Biology 1406 space. Okay, so I've created two spaces, both of them within Instructor, right? Okay, so let's see now. I want to create one more space. I'm going to come over here to the plus button again, and I'm going to create a new space, and this one I am going to call Personal. And it is going to be tied to my personal space. So I'm going to actually choose Personal for the profile, and then I'm going to click on this, and let's say that I just want to do, I'm going to do like, I don't know, which icon should I pick? I'm just going to do a heart, just for self-care. Okay, and then for my theme here for my personal space, I'm really partial to blue. It's one of my favorite colors. Not always, but sometimes. And so I'm going to go ahead and do this blue. Let's go ahead and go with the light one. And I'm going to go ahead and create that space. And there we go. Okay, so I have three spaces created. Two of them reside within the instructor or student profile, and one of them within the personal space. Okay, this is why I was talking to you about profiles first. I'm going to show you now. Okay, so let's go here to a new tab in our Biology 1406 space. And what I'd like you to do is go to your student email or somewhere else like that. So I'm going to go to YouTube here and notice that I am already signed in to my instructor profile in Google. So that means if I go to YouTube, in this space here, my Biology 1406, which is tied to my instructor profile, I'm signed into YouTube. If I switch over here to my English space and I go to YouTube, I'm still signed into my instructor profile. But watch what happens when I go to my personal space and I go to YouTube. I'm not signed in. So just like I showed you previously when we were working between the spaces, the cool thing we're seeing now is not only is it one space versus another where one is instructor or student versus personal, but any space I create with that instructor profile, if I'm signed in, I'm already signed in here, which is awesome. Whereas in my personal, I'm not. So now let me go ahead and sign in here to my personal account. Okay. Okay. There we go. Not now. Okay. And so now I'm signed into my personal account versus my instructor or student. And so now if I go over here and I create another space, and let's say that I just call this, for personal stuff, let me say that this is going to be like a vet records for my dog, okay? So I put it on my personal profile. I'm going to choose a theme. Let's go ahead and go with yellow, and then I'll go ahead and do the little paw print here for the icon. Vet records, create space. Well, again, just like I saw with the 2 spaces dedicated to my instructor account, here I'm already signed into my personal account. Okay, so I think you can already start to see some of the really cool ways that ARC handles those profiles we created and the ways in which we can kind of manage these spaces. And you'll notice that I can very quickly jump between spaces. I can even move tabs between spaces, and that's another cool thing. Watch this. So I'm going to start here with YouTube. So here I am signed into my instructor account. But let's say I do a search here for cellular respiration, and I realized in searching on YouTube, I didn't want it tied to this one. I wanted it tied to my personal account. This was something I was doing for me, not for school me. Well, you can go to your tab here, right-click on it, and choose to simply move it to a different space. Now, if you move it to a space where you're under the same profile, you don't get any kind of notification. But watch what happens when I try and move this to one of these 2 spaces where I'm under my personal profile. I get this notification from ARC. Move tab to Vet Records. Vet Records is using a different profile, so you might get logged out or lose your progress in this tab. This can't be undone. So this is a fail-safe to let you know. You can click this to have it not ask again, but I'm going to say move it and we'll see what happens. So now you'll notice that I'm still with my search in YouTube, but I'm in my personal profile in YouTube. That's good. If I were in Gmail, I probably would have lost my progress. So if I were in the midst of reading an email or replying to it, if I were in Gmail, when I loaded this panel, I probably would have then been served back to my actual Gmail inbox for my personal account versus my professional one. So just something to keep in mind. All right, so that's moving tabs between spaces. The final thing I want to show you is what spaces look like here in the library. So I'm swiping through, I see my 4 spaces, they're highlighting, I can move between them, but at any time I can also click on library and go here to spaces, and I can see all of my spaces laid out for me. And the cool thing here is I can do a couple of other things too. If I want to, I can reorganize spaces. So I can grab this personal one and drag it here so it comes after Vet Records. I can even add a new space by tapping on this, or if I want to, I can get very quickly to that layout by just swiping all the way through all of my spaces. So here, notice I've got these 4 spaces. I'm coming here, I'm on English, I'm on biology, and if I swipe to the left one more time, it pops out those spaces again. So I can very easily see what I'm working with, I can organize them, I can even click on this paintbrush to quickly modify the theming of those spaces. And I can change the profiles at any point in time in any of these spaces here by simply clicking on the profile and choosing to change it. So now this Vet Records one is under my instructor, and this is the only personal space that I'm on. So that's spaces. So hopefully you're kind of starting to see, all right, we've already built out these distinct spaces for our different courses, and then for our personal aspects of our life. You could even create another profile for your work if you wanted to, and then on a single computer in just one instance of ARC, you could be managing your student life, your work life, and your personal life, all through the beauty of these spaces. All right, I'm going to go ahead and delete this Vet Records space. I'm going to keep the personal space, but just know that moving forward, we're going to primarily be working out of these 2 student spaces. So in the next video, what I'm actually going to start talking to you a bit more about is tab organization and the real power of ARC and how we're going to ultimately use these spaces. So I will see you there.